Welcome back to the Adaptive Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Hotho. On Mondays in March, we are doing episodes that feature the voices of athletes with cerebral palsy for two reasons. One, because it's CP Awareness Month, and two, because your host happens to have cerebral palsy, and so I feel a particular affinity to that community, and so it's really nice to get to highlight those voices throughout the month of March. Now, our guest today is Megan Gleason. Megan is a para climber who just qualified for the national team and is really hoping to make it to the Olympics in 2028, where para climbing will be a recognized Paralympic sport. I am really excited for this conversation with Megan. I'm so glad we got to have her on the show. Megan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. So Megan, on Mondays in the month of March, we are featuring athletes with cerebral palsy because it's CP Awareness Month. So you have CP. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I have right-sided CP, although it affects my left foot a little bit too. So I'm a little complex that way. I've had it since I was born, diagnosed at 18 months old. So it's been a constant for me and something that I've had to learn to deal with through my life. But it's also led to some really cool friendships through it. So, good things and bad things.
Yeah. I feel like when I was, like late 20s, I think, I was like, I wonder if there's any CP groups out on Instagram or Facebook or anything like that. And I remember stumbling across hashtag CP Strong, those organizations of people. And I was like, oh, we're out there.
Yeah. I had the same, I think it was around the same time frame too, for me, where I started to go, okay, I need to find my people. I know they're out there. With the advent of social media and Instagram just makes it so much easier to find people. So shout out to my sister for convincing me to get an Instagram account. I finally, that was like the moment where I went, oh, I can actually find all the other people with CP. And I found Cerebral Palsy Strong, which is such a cool Instagram account and led to a lot of cool opportunities for me through that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really healthy Instagram community too. Like it's not, it's a really healthy CP community. I think I joined one on Facebook about 12 years ago that was like, just didn't make me feel empowered. I think it felt like, okay, the world is not a safe place. And I feel like when I was meeting people on Instagram from CP Strong, it was like, they were young like us. And, it was just kind of like, okay, we're doing this thing. And we were all just so encouraging. And I saw that they did a CP social, which I was not able to go to, but I heard you got to go to it.
Yeah, it was, I encourage everyone to go to the CP socials if they have any slight inclination of going, because I think that was the largest number of people in one room with CP I'd ever been in. And it was in New York City, which didn't hurt. I'm definitely a Broadway fan. So like sign me up. I will combine CP social with all of the shows I can in one weekend. So it was a great time for multiple reasons, but it was just so cool to start at this level of understanding with everyone going, you don't have to, I wear a brace when I'm out and about. So normally there's like an opening question with people who I don't know that's, oh, what's that? And going into all this excellent level of how much do I want to explain. But it was great to just be in that room where we all knew what was going on. And there's just this level of, you don't have to explain everything. There's a level of everyone just gets it. And it's really, I don't think I realized how much I had been wanting that kind of a space until I was in it. And it just felt so relaxing to not have to worry about passing as an able-bodied person or explaining myself to an able-bodied person.
Yes. And I feel like this might be one of the first times we've talked about on this podcast about passing as an able-bodied person. I remember we were talking about high school a little bit earlier. I remember in high school when people would ask, hey, what's wrong with you? I would say, oh, it's an old tennis injury, right? Because it showed most in my leg. I mean, sometimes my hand would sort of creep up. Does your hand ever do that? Like your affected hand?
Yeah.
Yeah. and you kind of like down.
Yes. It's like looking, do you ever do where you look at yourself, like you're walking down the street and you see like a shop where it's reflective and you can kind of see yourself like in the reflection.
Yes.
I would always like use that as a checkpoint, like, oh, gotta like DCP myself, like gotta get the
Yes.
hand down, gotta work on that walking gait and then move on. It's like, what is that?
Yeah, yeah. And so like trying to pass and that freedom of when you were at the CP social of not having to do that. For a lot of the listeners of this podcast, we're members of the adaptive CrossFit community. And so once a year, over 300 of us get together for a competition among 16 different categories. And it feels like when you have people in the room, whether they're missing limbs or have limb deficiencies or neurological issues or are using a chair, it just feels like all that subtext, like we were talking about when we hopped on the call, right? Of you don't have to, you can just jump right in. You almost feel like you have a friendship because you've gone through this together.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, yeah, you get to skip so many steps because foundationally you have some steps that are just locked in from the beginning. Yeah, it's just such a cool, like getting all the misfits together, and then you aren't misfits anymore when everyone's one.
Yes.
So.
And you're asking questions like, does this happen to you? Oh, this happens to you too? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad you found that community because I think for people listening here who are disabled or adaptive, we know, or at least we should know, that one of the best things we can do is find community. And so I think that's really cool that you found that through CP Social. Well, let's talk about your journey into climbing then. And kind of what got you started in paraclimbing or climbing in general?
It was a lot of attempts before I got to where I actually liked it. And it's funny because I start thinking about me at age 8 when I was first put on a climbing wall. I wanted nothing to do with the entire thing. I was really scared of heights. So I got up like halfway and like, keep going, you can do it. Like, no, I don't want to. And then that was it. So, it didn't start off very well, but then I kept doing it occasionally as a kid. With my uncle worked at a climbing gym. He'd bring us. So I was, exposed to it, and then actually took a climbing class in college. And that was where I learned how to do more things. I learned how to belay for the first time, and still didn't love it, but I actually ended up skipping so many classes that I had to make up 4 in a row the last week of class. So funnily enough, that was it for me, where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually making improvement. Like I'm actually getting better at this, which was kind of a light bulb moment for me in terms of sports. Because I tried soccer, I tried ultimate frisbee, I tried horseback riding, and horseback riding sucked for a while, but it's hard to bring a horse around everywhere. So I think climbing was the first one where I went, oh, actually, I can improve, and that got me to then get more into it. Last year it was announced that climbing was going to be in the Paralympics.
Yeah.
And that definitely got me started thinking, oh, I love like the Olympics and the Paralympics, and I've always thought it'd be really cool to compete, but it just never seemed like anything I could do. So that was where I started going, okay, that's something to keep in the back of my mind. And then actually through the Cerebral Palsy community, Katie, who runs Cerebral Palsy Strong, was doing a relay race, and it was like an adaptive team that they were putting together. They asked me if I wanted to join. I was like, guys, I don't bike or kayak or run, so I will spectate. But one of the competitors, Dylan, he was talking about climbing and said he went to nationals. And so I suddenly was like, oh, I have to be part of this conversation, and asked him about it. And we left it at, he said, are you going to nationals next year? And yes came out of my mouth. So then from then on, I was going, oh, I stick to my word. I'm not about to just say yes and then not do something. So that was definitely a kick in the pants for me to actually look into it. And then it kind of snowballed from there, where I found a coach and he thought I had a shot at going, and like, oh, no one's telling me to not do this. So I think this means I can do it.
So I want to circle back on a couple of things that you mentioned. Like you got into the sport that you liked, or this athletic endeavor that you liked, and then you found out that it had a competitive aspect to it, right?
Yeah.
And that lit something in you, I think.
Yeah. Oh,
It
I'm
sounds like.
competitive. Yeah.
Yeah, right, right. And I feel like as people with disabilities, especially kind of ones like CP that you kind of just have grown up with, and so it kind of does something in your brain a little bit about your psyche and who you think you are sometimes. Like I know for me, I always knew I was competitive, but I thought the only way I could ever show it was like mentally, right? So I would be like, oh, I'm going to be on the math team, I'm going to be on the academic team, and I'm really competitive. And then when I found a space when I could be competitive with my body, it was like, oh, and to the point where my coach was like, kind of like, you got to rein this in, man. Like,
Calm down.
like you're like, I'm not mean or anything like that, but I was getting really fired up, about like, okay, what's next? What's next? So I just think that's such a testament to not just in the CrossFit space, but to see someone saying that no, in other spaces too, when adaptive competitions are offered, adaptives will step up, right? Because we do
Yeah.
have that competitive fire.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's exactly that, where it's like, I think a lot of us channel that competitiveness without seeing a physical outlet into everything else that wasn't physical. And yeah, I think climbing is just really, I'm obviously very biased that climbing is amazing, but it's really an interesting sport because it takes out so many of the things that prevent CP athletes in particular from being able to showcase their athleticism, because it takes out the falling aspect. You're not going to fall on the ground if you're doing a rope climb. So I think for me, so much of my life, an art living with CP, it's like a lot of the time is spent trying to not end up on the ground.
Right.
So I think to have it where, oh no, falling is just part of it and you're going to get caught every time.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me that was, oh, this is where I can actually push it, because I won't have that mental freak out going in the back of my mind. Like, what if going on a hiking trail, what if I slip here and go down that ravine, So I think climbing is cool in that way, where it's like, nope, you're supported. You can still obviously injure yourself and, you can take big falls or whatever, and there's part of your brain that's screaming, this is maybe not a great idea to be this high off the ground, but that's what every climber has to deal with. So I think it's a cool equalizer in a way where, yeah, every climber that you're around is having those same mental battles. You're not running through the whole falling part any more than anyone else is.
Right.
And obviously there's then the physical challenges are going to be different than an able-bodied climber, but it was just cool to have this sport where, yeah, that fear of falling is flipped so much.
Yeah, let's take a peek into that mental side of it too when you're competing. And you're going for a hold or something like that, and it's not quite, your body's not doing what you want it to do, or you realize it's going to take more energy than you expected it to take. What's going on sometimes in your brain as you're kind of either trying to psych yourself up or problem solve? Sometimes I feel like half of what I do in CrossFit is problem solve. How am I going to get more energy out of my limited resources here? Can you tell us a little bit, maybe give an example from your training or from your competitions?
Yeah. I'm it's like every move is a mental like there's a whole monologue going on in my head. I think as I'm on the wall, I mean, from the very beginning, it's like, where am I going to be most balanced? And I think people with CP have an advantage here because we've been spending our whole lives trying to figure this out. So
that's true.
It's where am I going to be most balanced? But then there's points where you get like on my finals climb for nationals, I was having to go to the right, and that was that my right side's my weaker side, so that was really challenging to go. I know this is going to curve to the right. I know that like the probability that I'm going to fall off is just spiking right now, because I don't want to make a move too far over and have to rely on that right foot and slip off. So there's a lot of, okay, is this working? And then when it feels really bad, there is a part of my brain that's going, you could let go. Like, you don't have to put yourself through this right now. This feels really uncomfortable. But essentially climbing for me is squishing that voice into a corner
Yeah.
because I know it's there. I'm going, I know that I could give up right now. I know that. That's like always on the table, but I don't want to because I want to keep, that's where the fire comes in. I don't want to. I don't want to fall here. I'm going to try to figure some more stuff out. And so I think it's really, for me, the mental part is going, okay, I know I could give up, but I'm not going to give up. And because I'm, a strong climber and I've trained and I've problem solved before, I'm going to try to figure out a way to get out of this. And so it's a lot of like testing what's going to work. And then once you're going, you have to be fully committed to that. We talk about commitment a lot in climbing. You got to commit to the move. And sometimes that's really, really difficult to do, especially if it's relying on, for me, my right leg. If I have to commit to a move or my right leg's fully extended and I'm having to put weight on it, that's a hard commitment to make. So it's that trusting that, you can keep going. And then it's once you're ready to do something a little scary, you've evaluated all your options and that's the best one, then it's time to trust that you know what you're doing and get after it. And then, sometimes you don't get it and that's how it goes. But yeah, learning to trust yourself is a lot of climbing.
Yeah. So you placed second at nationals. Does that mean that you're on the Team USA then for Paralympic climbing, or what's the next steps on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. So it doesn't mean I've made the Paralympic team yet because that will be determined in 2028. But it does mean that I'm on the paraclimbing national team. So in the lead up to the Paralympics, they'll have nationals every year. So you'll have a chance to make the national team every year. And then the year of the Paralympics, they'll have the trials. So right now I'm, like kind of year by year. I've made it this year. We'll see if I make it next year.
Yeah.
But yeah, it means I can compete this year, which I'm excited about.
And getting on the national team, does it also open up funding or like support?
Yeah, unfortunately not yet.
Okay.
It's self-funded right now. They're expecting to get more funding as it gets closer to the Paralympics, essentially. So that'll be cool to see how it grows as they get more traction. But yeah, unfortunately right now it's self-funded.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you one more question about climbing, and then I want to switch gears kind of without a clutch. So if someone wanted to simulate what it's like to climb with CP, let's say they go to their local rock climbing gym and they go up on an auto belay, and you're like, okay, get on a 5.7, 5.8 and do this, and this will feel like you're climbing with CP. What would you recommend?
Yeah. It's so funny because it's going to depend on like every single person with CP has a different experience. But I think to simulate the leg lack of power, I'd say you're not allowed to go push off onto your toes for this move. So for me, if you wanted to climb like me, you'd have to not push up onto your toes from your right foot. And then, maybe we'd throw in some pretend your leg is shaking right now, just for mental stimulus.
Yeah.
To really feel the pressure. Yeah. And yeah, I think the balance part would be kind of hard to simulate, but maybe we'd throw some weird holds in their path just to simulate the instability or something like that. Make them spin around a little bit.
Yeah. Or you were saying earlier, like weight them down awkwardly, so that their balance is off to one side.
Yeah, we just have a weight on one side and then they'd feel like they were off balance. Yeah, I think the combination of all that, you get a similar feeling.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for that. Okay, so shifting gears without a clutch, you went on a mission trip to the Paris Paralympics, but it's not what people would think. Can you tell me a little bit about it, and then I want to talk about it?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I went to the Paris Paralympics with an organization called Renewal Missions. And what we were there for was to not do a traditional mission trip where you're, telling everyone about Jesus. We were there to really tell people's stories, tell the athletes' stories, and just support them while they were there. So we interviewed quite a few athletes from a number of different countries, and we were just putting it on our social media so people could see, and putting them out as YouTube videos as well. So we're still working on getting all that up. But yeah, it was a really cool experience to just be there as someone who wasn't an athlete competing and wasn't part of their support team competing. It was pretty rare for there to be that many fans at the
Hmm.
Paralympics. So we just tried to go to as many events as we could and be there to support them. And we kind of go, if we'd interviewed one athlete, we'd try to go to all the events of theirs that we could. And yeah, it was really really a fun experience.
Yeah, that seems like such an interesting idea for a mission trip, right? Is to go and your work is signal boosting essentially a marginalized population, right? Being like, okay, we're going to go
Yeah.
make sure that the stories of these athletes are told and we're going to celebrate with them.
Yeah, it was a really cool it was like one of the coolest things I think I've ever been a part of, because everyone was not expecting it. And so to come in and just be able to go, hey, we're celebrating you regardless of how you place, that was a fun part too, is we just talked to anybody. So it didn't matter if you were the gold medalist or if you just placed last in your entire category. It
Hmm.
was we were just there to be there, and it felt really cool to also just have people in my hometown and my area who'd heard about it watching the Paralympics for the first time because they knew I was there. So it was cool to just be able to get more people excited about something I was already really excited about.
So I think this opens the door to a conversation that we were having before we started recording, but that we actually haven't had on this podcast yet, which is about faith and disability. So can you share a little bit of your story kind of at the intersection of faith and disability, where it's been good and where it's not been not so good?
Yeah, it's been, I mean, I'm a Christian, so faith is obviously a really important part of my life. And, um, I also have a disability. So these things have to go together. And I think I've wrestled with how those things go together throughout my life. But I think there's, in the Christian world, a lot of people with disabilities have had bad interactions with Christians in particular, trying to pray for healing. And so I think that's where my how I think about it is, I'm we talk about being beautifully and wonderfully made, and I don't think I fit into an and other category. So um thinking about my disability as being something that's beautiful and part of me, and um how God made me too. And I think that's hard for people to get when they're thinking about bodies as having to be whole, and that they should be healthy and all of that. But I've always thought about of myself as being able to, yeah, be a Christian as myself, and that I don't need actually prayer for healing, because in my mind it's I need I need prayer for a lot of other things in my life. It's not the CP, it's the everything else that's challenging. So it's definitely been a something I've had to wrestle with personally. And people do still ask me if I need prayer for my CP, and I say no. Like, but you can pray for anything else. I just don't need prayer for that. I mean, sometimes, there's sometimes stuff that crops up where, yeah, you can pray for my right leg to stop having a hissy fit. That's fine. But
Right.
like, don't take it away, because that's me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's probably just an internalized ableism that a lot of people have, that I don't understand why this girl doesn't want that taken away.
Hmm.
And I think, yeah, it's kind of a beautiful thing to go, yep, this is who I am, and I accept that this is who I am, and I'm gonna do the best with the body that I have, and not like spend my whole life hoping, wishing for, and praying for another one. I think mine's pretty cool.
Yeah. There's like this weird ableism in theology too, right? Of like we get to heaven and what like, oh, you're healed. And it's like, what if I don't want to be? Like, what if this is the body that I've had my whole life
Yeah,
and this is the one I want?
yeah. Like, would it feel like your body if it was totally healed? Yeah, and that's where I think, we get to heaven. I'm like, we'll have the body that we're meant to have up there, whatever that
Mhm.
looks like for us. And I think for me, I there is always a, if you could put me in a body that could just sprint, that would be great. I would love to have some moments in that body and just feel that freedom and feel that joy. That's not the body I have right now. And that's, that's okay. But, there's part of me that would be excited about that. But,
Yeah.
I'll take what heaven gives me.
Sometimes there's movements that people can do in CrossFit with two good limbs, like handstand push-ups or bar muscle ups, and these really cool energetic gymnastics movements that I'm like, yeah, that'd be fun to do a few times. But then I also think it would get boring, and I'd be like, okay, I want to go back to being me.
Then it would just be like, okay, now we're good. Yeah, maybe it would be like we'd be disappointed, like, man, everything's too easy. Like I just go through life and it just happens.
All right, we're gonna go to a quick lightning round, okay?
Okay.
All right. What are you obsessed with right now?
I would say I'm currently obsessed with Mumford & Sons' new album. It's going to be released. There's only 2 tracks, and I've listened to them so many times. I think I need to have a brief hiatus so I can fully get ready for it. That's
okay.
Really obsessed with.
Deal. I love that. Do you have a pre-workout snack that you love?
Yeah, this is maybe a weird one, but I got really into the Chomps beet sticks. Oh. And so you can't have too much of it or else you'll feel like that was a horrible idea.
That was a bad idea.
I tend to I get really hangry or so I'm obsessive about fueling. So I'll just have a tiny bit of it and then I'm like, okay, I'm good. I can conquer the world now.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like the appropriate number of those is somewhere between 2 and 2.5, and anything over that, you're probably headed for trouble.
Anything over that, and don't do it.
Yeah. If you could pick a walk-up song, what would your walk-up song be?
Oh my gosh, I never thought about this question. I think something from Imagine Dragons, just because everything they do just sounds really epic, and then I would feel epic, and that would be great.
Okay, and then this one's really just a curiosity from when you said you were in New York City. What Broadway shows did you go see?
The Outsiders and then Hadestown, and I will plug The Outsiders forever. It was the best. 2
final questions. If someone new to adaptive athletics is listening to this, what's the best piece of advice you would give them?
I would say do what's fun. I mean, if you're just getting started, I think it's important to find something that you like. And in my case, that took a very long time. So don't be afraid to keep trying. In my case, it was if at first you don't succeed, try again times 10. So I'd say keep trying things don't think that just because you can't do something today or next week or next month doesn't mean you won't ever be able to do it. I think that's a huge thing I've taken away from climbing is that I can look at a route and go, there's no way. I'll get third of the way up and then think I'll never be able to do it. But I work on it and then I'm able to do it in a month. So there's so many times where you just never know what you could eventually smash if you don't take that first step or that first attempt and just keep working at it.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true in so many sports and I love that. And then the final question, if you could encourage a younger version of yourself, what would you tell them?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'd tell that girl who's freaking out on the climbing wall, the 10-year-old at the birthday party. I'd say you're so strong and you're stronger than you think you are. And one day you're going to be able to do this. I think that's what I'd tell her.
Oh, that's so good, Megan. Megan, this has been an amazing conversation. This has been a blast. Listen, as we're wrapping up, what are some organizations, if someone wanted to learn more about the sport of paraclimbing, what's a way that someone can learn more about climbing and paraclimbing in particular?
A really good account to follow is USA Paraclimbing. They're on Instagram and they will post really frequently. So you'll get to see a bunch of different disabled climbers and they talk about different events. So they're great. You can always reach out to me on Instagram too. I'm one Megan, one Exosim. So that's an option. And if you go online too, you can find USA Paraclimbing. It's on the USA Climbing website, and that's where everything is. So if you want to get involved and go to nationals next year, which I always encourage, it's an open nationals, so there's no reason not to do it. That's where you can get signed up and ask questions.
Awesome. And if you're an adaptive athlete, they will categorize you at nationals, right? You don't need to.
Yeah.
What do you need to bring? Do you need to bring paperwork or anything like that? How does that process work?
So there is a process of getting classified. So that's why you do have to pay attention to the timelines for, they'll have different deadlines for early registration. It's good to get because then you have a lower registration fee, but they'll also ask for what's called a medical diagnostic form. And so that'll be like your primary care who said, cool. Hey, yes, they have this disability, and any documentation that you have. And then, so they have that to start with. And then when you actually arrive at nationals, they have classification for the first 2 days. So that's where you have someone actually sit down and assess what you're able to do.
Well, hey, thanks so much for being on the podcast, Megan. This was a blast.
Thank you. Had a great time.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the podcast. I really enjoyed my conversation with Megan, particularly our conversation around faith and disability. Now, I realize you don't listen to an adaptive athletics podcast wanting to hear things about faith, and don't worry, we're not going to talk about this all the time. But matters of faith are interesting to me. One, I went to seminary, so I have a background in this kind of stuff. Two, I work at a church. And three, I interact with people often talking about faith-based issues. In fact, Megan's not the first adaptive athlete I've spoken to who's told me that they were really turned off by church growing up because people tried to pray for them to try and heal them of their disability. And that's not what the person wanted. The person just wanted to be a member of the community, to belong, right? Megan was talking about even earlier in the episode about the sense of belonging she felt at that CP social, right? So when you think about the holistic lives of adaptive athletes, we are whole people. I mean, we care about being part of communities, all kinds of communities, faith communities included, but it might not look like what you expect. So I realize that was a bit of a side tangent, but I thought it was important to touch on. Now, if you're looking to get involved in adaptive sports or looking to try to do something different, maybe expand beyond CrossFit, I thought Megan's advice was spot on. Try, fail, and try again. And maybe you'll just find exactly what you need. You can learn more about paraclimbing by checking out USA Paraclimbing on Instagram or visiting the USA Climbing website. And if you're thinking about trying a competition, like Megan said, go for it. It's an open national, there's space for you, and I know that at least one adaptive CrossFit athlete, Andrea Wilson, competed at the same nationals that Megan did and placed second in her division. So hey, maybe adaptive CrossFitters is a place for us in rock climbing. We'll see. Anyways, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.